This episode is supported by California Avocados Direct, premium hand-picked avocados sent straight from their family farm in California to your doorstep. No storage facilities, no middlemen. If you are intentional about what fuels your body, this one is for you. Visit CaliforniaAvocadosDirect.com and use the code TheAthleticSchool for 10% off on your first order. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Athletic School podcast. Today, our guest speaker is Wayne Mullins. He's the founder of Ugly Mug Marketing, a company known not just for creative work, but for results, real lasting impact. What makes Wayne different isn't what he has built, but how he thinks. So, in this episode, I brought Wayne so we can talk about his mindset, time management, discipline, beliefs, and how to actually create the life you want, not just in the business. The conversation is for anyone who's trying to grow, not just externally, but internally. Wayne, thanks for joining me. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thanks, Igor. I'm excited for the chat and thanks for the opportunity.
A quick break before we get back to the show. First of all, thank you so much for listening to the Athletic School podcast. It means the world to me. Second, in whatever platform you might be listening to this, if you could hit that follow or subscribe button, that would mean the world to me as well. It's just the beginning, but it already feels like something special. And if you do that, I promise you that with all my energy, I'll bring the best guest speaker as possible, and I'll keep sharing all the lessons I have learned through this journey to make you a better person on and off the field. Now, let's get back to the show. My first question for you is, looking back, what experience do you think shifted the way you think about success? Not in terms of money necessarily, or business, but in terms of who you were becoming.
Yeah, I think for me, one of the very first and earliest things that kind of shifted my mindset around success was a good friend of mine in college. He had an uncle who was in the oil and gas business, and his uncle had worked his way up in one of the large oil and gas companies, one of the gas stations that we see on every other street corner. And he had reached kind of the really top of the corporate ladder in that company and decided to leave and go out and start his own oil and gas company. And at the time, I was friends, we were in college, me and my friend. He would go down to his uncle's house, which was down in South Louisiana, and he had his own private 9-hole golf course. His swimming pool was in the shape of a crawfish. There were multiple houses. He had his own baseball field, ponds, everything on this property. And in my head, I was like, man, this is it. This is the pinnacle of success. Like, what more could you want for? He had a private airplane. He had his own yacht. I mean, this was quote unquote the American dream, if you will. And in conversations with my friend, I came to find out that his uncle was actually very unhappy. He had a very messed up family life. I won't go into details, just a very messed up family life. He was always having to numb the pain, numb the stress, numb the anxiety through different substances. And so for me, it was just a real eye opener. And again, obviously success doesn't do that to everyone. But for me, it was like the first glimpse kind of inside and seeing somebody who had achieved so much and accomplished so much. And yet here they are living an incredibly broken and dysfunctional life.
Mm-hmm. And how that made you feel? Did it change your mindset in terms of the things that you were trying to achieve in a way?
I think what it did for me, Igor, was it forced me to understand and to put protective things in place in terms of habits, in terms of rituals, in terms of routines, to not be so lopsided, right? So in my friend's uncle's case, he had become so lopsided in the pursuit of success, monetary success, that everything else took a back seat. And so for me, that was kind of the pivot for me, was like, I'm a very driven person, but I need to learn to be driven in a balanced approach.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that whenever you chase, I don't know if the correct word would be happiness, but maybe taking care of your family in a way, not chasing the success that we think in material way, do you think this success in terms of money and awards, those things will come to you naturally?
Yeah, I think the best definition of success is not the pursuit of the thing. So whether it's money, whether it's relationships, whether it's rewards, it's in becoming the type of person who is worthy of achieving those things.
Mhm.
And so I think the outside accolades, whether that's the bank account balance or whether that's the awards or whatever it may be, those are merely a byproduct of who you are as a person. And so it's really about understanding and learning how to become the type of person who is worthy and capable of achieving whatever those outcomes may be.
Mhm. Um, Back then, when I was going to school and I had the chance to do the internship at Ugly Mug, one of the things that stood out for me was the way that Ugly Mug was doing the things that you guys do. I think it starts with the name of it. Like when you think about a marketing agency, you probably don't think about Ugly Mug, or you know. And I got to read your book and things like that, and I came to the realization that Ugly Mug doesn't do things in a traditional way when it comes to organizations and companies in general. Um, so my question is, why take a non-traditional approach with your marketing agency? Um, and was there a point, a decision that you made in the past, in the beginning, that people are like, "Oh, Wayne, I don't think you should do this," but you did it anyway?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, it goes back to also understanding who you are as a person. And one of the primary motivating factors for me in my personality and the way that I'm wired is I'm just wired to be rebellious. I'm wired to think outside the box and to do things that are different or remarkable. And I've paid incredible prices to do that. I mean, you've been here at the office and we have, a 75-foot octopus painted across the front of a building, and the front of the building is pink and blue and, all these funky colors. Um, and I've paid incredible prices to do those things, right? It'd been far easier for me just to keep that money and put that money in my pocket. But yet I spent thousands of dollars to have that mural done, thousands to have the other colorful mural on the side, and, have a big octopus painted on the ceiling in the conference room and the mural back here. You know what I mean? Um, so first of all, you have to understand who you are, right? If I'm doing all of these things just to try to keep up with someone else or try to outdo someone else, like I would end up being miserable because I wouldn't be true to who I am. So for me, the company has always been a reflection of me and my personality, which is to do things different, to do things outside of the box. And yes, absolutely, the name is very jarring. It's very different. I've had in the past someone offer us a very large contract. It was tens of thousands of dollars, but they refused to give us the contract if we didn't change the name to something else. And I was unwilling to do that, even though I could have desperately used the money at the time.
Mhm. Do you think that everyone is made to think outside the box?
Um, I think that for some people, it comes more naturally. I
Mhm.
think I've just been gifted. Like that's just the way it's part of my DNA, I guess, part of the way I'm wired. I do think though it is a trait or a skill that can be fostered and can be developed and grown. So one of the things that I'm very mindful of are the routines or habits or patterns that we tend to fall into. For example, most people they go to work the exact same way every day, or they put on the same shoe first. So you put on your left shoe first or your right shoe first. And so I'm very intentional and very mindful about breaking some of those habits and some of those patterns simply for the sake of breaking outside of the norm, outside of what is, habitual or traditional. And so I think anyone can learn to become a more creative, more out of the box thinker, but it starts with just those little habits or little disciplines of forcing yourself to look at things or to do things differently.
Mhm. And I mean, for I'm thinking about my audience and people are listening to us, they're probably thinking, well, why should I put my left shoe first instead of my right? Like, what do I gain with that? How does that help me think outside the box?
Yeah. So again, I'm gonna butcher all this because I'm not a neuroscientist, but there's, I believe it's called myelin inside of our brains, and the more we do something over and over again, the myelin reinforces the connection between those neurons, whatever those things are in our
Yeah,
brain, right?
probably. Mhm.
Yeah, it reinforces those connections, and so they become like a proven pathway over and over again. And so that's why you can get in a vehicle and you can drive somewhere, and you get there and you don't even really remember driving that somewhere because it's all just habitual, because it's just routine. And so the difference that it makes is when you intentionally choose to break those habits, you're acknowledging to yourself that you can shape and sculpt a different path forward. And what it's doing is it's forcing you to start rewiring different connections in your brain. And we can dive into this later, but one of the things that I believe to be true is that most people, their future looks almost identical to their past. And that is because they're making decisions from their past perspective instead of from a clear present perspective. And so those little silly things like putting on a different shoe first, or driving a different way to work, or whatever those routine habits are, breaking those on purpose from time to time forces us out of those routines and habits.
Mhm. It does sound like a lot of Joe Dispenza teachings there, and we had the chance to talk a little bit about some of his teachings. Um, was there a specific season in your life where his teachings or those type of things that you were talking about right now helped you reset your identity in a way?
Yeah, what I would say, Igor, is that like I mentioned earlier, I'm a driven person. I think a lot of people who are entrepreneurs, entrepreneurial, are very driven. And so we, by default, set out on this path to seek and find new information, to seek and find things that can help us and speed us along on our journey towards whatever destination that we're pursuing. And for me, over the last, I've been on this journey now for, easily 20 plus years. And I've read thousands of books, probably over 1,000 books, probably on personal development, leadership, marketing, all that stuff. I've been to all the seminars. I've been to all the things. I've been in all the coaching programs. And, if you totaled up what I've spent on all of that stuff, it's probably easily $250,000, $250,000 or more over the last 20 years. And yet I reached the point where I feel like I'm still stuck, right? I know all the stuff. I know how to do all the stuff. And yet I felt like I kept sabotaging myself, getting in my own way. And so that, I don't remember exactly how I came across Dr. Joe Dispenza's work, but a lot of his work is based on this notion that until we're able to break free from that past, until we're able to truly be in the present now, as he would call it, we're going to keep living the same life with slight variations day after day. And so I think that the true work of a leader, the true work of an entrepreneur is probably, not to use the 80-20, but it's probably truly 80% internal and self and 20% external and business.
Mhm. So, for the people that are listening to us, you said that you have read many books, you spent a lot of money on all those things, and you still felt stuck in a way. What path should they take? Should they go into Joe Dispenza work, for example, or should they go into, reading books and all of that? Should they balance each other? What are your thoughts on helping these people break free from, whatever pattern they are living in?
Yeah, I think the very first thing that I would say is this, that there's two words that are extremely dangerous. And those two words are yeah, but. So for so long in my journey, I would read something in a book and it was like, okay, well, the book would say the next steps for you are going to be A, B, and C. And I would be like, man, that's amazing. That's great advice. Yeah, but I'm in a small town. Yeah, but I don't have connections. Yeah, but I don't have any extra money. Yeah, but I didn't come from a lot of money, whatever those things are. And so when you hear those two words pop up in your mind, you are living from the past. And really, the past only tells us how we got to where we are today, but it holds no value or no merit on what is possible for us in the future. So, to answer your question, one is to be aware of those two words and where we are making excuses for ourselves and our own abilities. Because when we say the words, yeah, but, we are choosing to believe and to lean on our past instead of our future.
Mm-hmm.
Number two would be, I believe that you have to have a future that is so compelling that it pulls you to it, right? We have to have something so compelling in the future that we can deal with the frustration. We can deal with the years of struggle. We can deal with all of the problems that are come up because that future is so compelling. It's pulling us to it because, anyone who's been in the entrepreneur game for any length of time knows it's incredibly difficult. And one of the things I've learned is that over time, we think that at some point we're going to reach a level where the problems go away. And the truth is, the problems never go away. You just get better problems. So in the early days of the entrepreneurial journey, finances are usually a huge issue, right? Because you're struggling to pay the bills, you're struggling to get income in, you're struggling to attract clients, all of these things. You will fast forward, and now the problems may be you're struggling because all your team needs better benefits. And so health insurance keeps going up every single year. It's still similar problems. They're just better problems. And you have a different mindset to work through those problems in the future. I know that's a long-winded answer, and I don't know if I directly answered the question, but
No, you did. You did. When when we became intern at Ugly Mug, you gave us a notebook that said reasons are excuse. Um, do you believe in that 100%, or do you think it's just like um, it's a type of mindset? It's beautiful to say, but at the end of the day, do you truly believe that all the reasons that we give to ourselves or to others are excuses?
yeah, I'm a firm believer, 100% believe that results or success and excuses are mutually exclusive. So in other words, the more excuses that you have, the less success you're going to have. The more success you have, the fewer excuses you're going to have. 100%.
Mhm. And that kind of brings me to the next topic, which is stoicism, where we talked a little bit about it, and I feel like um, we all have reasons, we all have excuses, but sometimes we just can, it's out of our control, which is something that stoicism talks a lot about it. Um, when did stoicism became a thing to you? Um, and can you share maybe a moment where those principles kept you grounded in a way?
Yeah, I think that, for me, Stoicism became a thing, um, probably a decade ago, give or take. But the concepts and the ideas around Stoicism and the core philosophies I've known for a long time. Um, I had a great grandfather who was a farmer, and that's what he spent his entire life doing. He was a farmer, he raised cattle, he raised crop, and that's how they survived. That's how they you know he provided for his family forever that way. And I remember when my great grandmother passed away. Um, he was on the farm that morning that she had passed away the evening before. The morning she gets up, the morning he gets up, he still has to go out and feed the cows. He still has to go out and tend to the chickens. He still has to take care of all the things, despite the fact he had lost his wife, who he'd been married to for over 50 years the night before. And I think that, to me, it's that whole philosophy of, um, our life is obviously encompassed with a lot of emotions and a lot of feelings and a lot of all these things, and they serve a purpose. The problem is when we give them more authority over our future than they deserve. And so the story of him having to get up and tend to the farm was just an illustration in those earlier years of my journey of that. It's like, in business, there are times and there are days when I don't feel like doing certain things that have to be done in the business. And I see this in entrepreneurs all the time. They allow their feelings, their frustrations to dictate what they do each day. And, Like today I had on the calendar to record some videos for Instagram and YouTube. I honestly didn't feel like doing it. Had some other stuff that I needed to tend to, other stuff that was more pressing, more urgent, but I forced myself to go do it because it was on my calendar to be done, and I know it's an important thing that needs to happen. And so for me, it's about learning to acknowledge my feelings, but also understanding the path that I'm on, the future that I'm trying to create, and the type of person I need to become in order to bring that future to life.
Hmm. I feel like nowadays we talked a lot about mental health, and especially in athletes, we have that feeling almost every single day when it's time to go to practice, and you just don't feel like it's raining, it's cold, you just simply don't want to go, but you have to go anyways. And I feel like nowadays becomes more normal to the point that like some people think that it's okay not to go. Um, where should we draw the line? And of course, if you, at least for yourself, where do you draw the line that, okay, maybe I should stay in and feel these feelings that I'm having of maybe sadness, maybe, some bad feelings that I might be feeling, and I should stay home? Or should I push? Should I go do the video? Should I go out and run?
Yep. Um, Again, I'm a huge believer that our feelings in the present moment are often deceptive. Um, I could pull up on my phone and show you that I'm currently on day 2,600 and something of hitting my calorie goal on my Apple Watch every single day. So 2,000 days, 2,600 and something days straight of hitting that. That is in the midst of 2020 when I had COVID.
Hmm.
I still got up and made myself move enough to hit that goal, even though I was horribly sick. Um, I use an app for meditation called Calm. I am on, I think, day 3,000 and something straight and not missing a single day of that app. And the reason for that is because my future self is the type of person who is going to honor the word that I give to myself, regardless of how I feel.
Hmm.
And I believe that mindset is so, so important. You see, there's this great analogy. Zig Ziglar used to be a motivational speaker and one of the top sales trainers in the world. And back in the 90s, he was getting $100,000 for a 60-minute keynote speech back in the 90s. And he had this analogy of an old hand water pump. So like a water well hand pump that you would go and pump. And he gave this whole story, but he talked about how that if a well hasn't been used in a while, you first had to pour water into the top of the pump. You had to prime that pump and start pumping it. And then you'd have to pump and pump and pump for minutes before it would pull the water way up from down under the ground up to the well. But once it started coming out of the well, it only then took a small, steady effort to keep it going, to keep the pump going. And I see this happening so often with people is that they start a commitment. I mean, just look at the gyms at the beginning of a new year, right? People start a commitment, and then for whatever reason, they don't feel like it. They had a bad night's sleep, kids kept them up all night, whatever. They were up sick. It doesn't matter. Like there's a million reasons. And they make an exception. And exceptions always become the norm. Exceptions always become the norm. So if you want to see where you're going in the future, look at the exceptions you're making today.
Awesome. I love that. And, it is impressive that you kept going throughout all these years, doing all those things. And like you said, yes, things happen. And I know you have a family and you have to hang out with your kids, with your wife, you have a business, you have to take meetings all day long, but you manage to get everything done. You manage to get videos recorded for YouTube, talk to clients, talk to uh, all your employees and all of that. What do you do in order to get everything done? Like why, what made you not have an exception one day that you were sick and and things didn't go well? Like, how can people um not only have that driveness and that discipline, but like how, what does your day look like in order to get all those things done? Quick break before we dive back in. As someone training for an Ironman on a vegan diet, what I eat seriously matters. That's why I have teamed up with CaliforniaAvocadosDirect.com. They deliver fresh avocados picked by hand straight from the farm, right to your door. No warehouse stops, no delays, just real food straight from the source. They grow seasonal varieties like Hass, Fuerte, and Reed, so you're always getting what's best at the moment. Each box is backed up with satisfaction guarantee. You can even set up a subscription so you're never low on the nutrients that support your performance and recovery. Use the code TheAthleticSchool at checkout to grab 10% off. The link is in the show notes. And a huge thanks to California Avocados Direct for fueling the mission and supporting the journey. Now, let's get back to the show.
Yeah, first of all, what I would say is it's not drive or discipline. It's the unwillingness to break my word to myself. I am unwilling to break the commitment I've made to myself. Now, at some point, if I say, you know what, I've been doing this now for 26, 27, 3,000 days, whatever it is, and I say I'm going to not hit it tomorrow or I'm going to take off tomorrow, then I'm okay with that, right? Because I've changed my commitment to myself. But most people get so upset when other people don't keep their commitments. And yet, the person in the mirror looking back at us is the one who breaks 90% of the commitments in our lives. We break our own commitments. But how do I get it all done? How do I keep everything, on track? Number one is I have a calendar and schedule that I stick to. Number two, I always 100% of the time know what next week is going to look like before next week's even starts. And then the same applies to every day. So I already know exactly what tomorrow is going to look like before tomorrow even starts. And I always know what my top priorities are for tomorrow. So in the event that, things go crazy, in the event that whatever takes place, I know the top things I must get done regardless of everything else. The other thing that I would say is this, that the things you don't want to do are the things you need to do first. So most people, for example, put off working out until after work or in the afternoon. The problem is by that point, most people's willpower is completely depleted. There's too much room for so many other things to come up before that workout happens. And I get it. People say, well, I'm not a morning person. I'm all this stuff. And the truth is I'm not either. But I made a decision probably 7-8 years ago that I was going to become a morning person to get my workouts in. So I get up at 5 o'clock, 5:05 to be exact, 365 days a year. I have to do that if I'm going to get my workout in, if I'm going to get some reading time in, if I'm going to get some meditation time in. I have to get up at that time because if not, once the day unfolds, there's too many opportunities for distractions to show up.
Was there ever a time that you had a belief or maybe a mindset that you held on to for too long, and once you let it go, everything changed?
Absolutely. One of the videos that I recorded today is about what is called the theory of constraints. And what happens so often in business, and it's true for life, is that we keep piling more and more things on, right? So we keep adding more things to our plate, trying to help us, trying to find the right tool, the right patch, the right hack to get us to that next level. And the truth is that most of the time, it's not something that is missing that is preventing us from reaching the destination that we want. What is missing, or what is the issue, is there's something that is actually holding us back. There's a constraint in our lives or in our business that is holding us back. And until we remove that constraint, we will remain stuck. And so the answer is absolutely yes. And it's ever evolving and it's ever changing, right? We can't see what we can't see. which is why it's so important to have coaches and mentors and people who are willing to speak the truth into your life, because we cannot see what other people can see about us. A great question to ask is, what's it like being on the other side of me? What's it like for my wife being on the other side of me? What's it like for my kids? What's it like for my staff, for my teammates being on the other side of me? And not some jaded, perspective to make ourselves feel better or look better, but what's it really like being on the other side of me? And then the next part of that question is, what do I want it to be like? Like, what do I want people to say about me at my funeral? Live your life towards that, and everything else will take care of itself.
Was there ever an opportunity that you turned down, something that looked amazing on paper, but saying no to that opportunity helped you protect in a way a deeper purpose, maybe your values?
Yeah, there's a great book I highly recommend called Essentialism that really focuses on and talks about this topic. The answer is yes. So, very early on in the ugly mug marketing journey, I was offered I was offered a position in the early days that was a lot of money and a great opportunity, and I turned that down. And at the time, ugly mug marketing was struggling, and we weren't making hardly any money at all. I turned that down, and then fast forward about 10 more years, maybe 8 years. I was then again approached by somebody else who wanted to buy the company and basically hire me to come run the marketing side of their company as well. And again, it was a very tempting offer, but I had to look into the future and realize that the future version of me, that would be a short term, right? That would be a short term side trip that would maybe get me slightly closer, but it would be too much of a detour out of where I wanted to end up. And so I turned those opportunities down.
Mhm. The other day we had a talk a little bit about abundance. And when did the concept of abundance started making sense to you? Not necessarily in a terms of truly understanding intellectually, but in a day-to-day life. How do you apply that concept to your life?
Yeah, I think for me, I grew up, let's go to money first. I grew up in a family that didn't have a lot of money, and there was a lot of contention around money. In other words, a lot of negative energy, negative emotion around money. There was never enough money. It was my dad always had 2 and sometimes 3 jobs to pay the bills, and was working all the time. And I grew up around that, and there was still never enough money to pay the bills. And we lived a very modest life. It wasn't like we were in a lot of debt trying to just keep up with the Joneses. And so for me, I've had to work really, really hard on the money mindset and abundance around financials and abundance around that. Like, that is something I still work on every single week. This morning I was reading some stuff specifically about mindset and about mindset around money and abundance. So number one is, I think it's something that has to be cultivated, it has to be worked, and it has to be nurtured. Number two is that I believe that we should approach everything in our lives from a sense of gratitude, because what we give off, what we put out is what we get back. What we focus on is what expands. And you can dive into science, you can dive into all types of, different schools of thought on mindset and religious beliefs and all this kind of stuff. But the truth is, even from a psychological neuroscience perspective, whatever you focus on is going to expand. So when you're focusing on lack, and when you're focusing on don't have, the gap, you're going to stay in the gap. You're going to stay in the struggle. And again, it is a work in progress, because oftentimes our current reality is sometimes screaming a very different thing at us.
Mhm. So, and that's my question, because I feel like a lot of people are gonna listen to this and they're gonna like, well, it sounds beautiful, but how do I like? I do not have the money in my bank account. How do I, pay for rent? How do I go out with my friends? Everyone's going out, but I don't have the money. How can I be not necessarily grateful for that? Because I think great being grateful is a little bit easier, but like, how can I be grateful for the money that I don't have in my bank account? How can I think of an abundance mindset where the money it's not there?
Yeah. So again, if money is not there for you and that's what you're focusing on, like you're focusing on money and it's not there, you are focusing on the lack.
Mhm,
Instead, look around you at all the other things that are in abundance. Be grateful for those things. Bless those things. Like, for example, water. Like, when's the last time you were explicitly grateful for the water and you bless the water and you were thankful for the water that you're going to consume or the oxygen that is freely all around you all day that you get to breathe in, or the little kids who walk past you and smile, or like there's so many things to be thankful for and grateful for. And yet we may have this one area in our lives, which may be financial. And what do we spend all of our time consumed on and focused on? We spend it focused on that gap. We spend it focused on what we're lacking. And it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
mhm. So, and I wanna, on the same idea, I wanna bring to an example like as an athlete. Let's say I'm playing, and then for some reason I'm on a team, but I'm not playing. I'm not getting any minutes. The coach is not playing me. Um, I feel like my teammates don't like me. What would that mindset look like? What would the abundance look like in that scenario?
Yeah, I think if that was a true scenario, number one, I would say, okay, the reality is I'm stuck on the sideline. I'm stuck on the bench. I'm not getting playtime. That's the reality. But how can I be the absolute best and most grateful teammate on the team? So how can I truly support the team from the sideline? How can I be grateful for the opportunity just to be a part of the team? Think of all the people that didn't even make the team. Again, it's a slight shift. And again, when we focus on the fact that I don't get playing time, what are we focusing on? We're focusing on the lack. And therefore, we're going to continue to perpetuate that problem. We're going to continue to get that back in our lives. Instead, if you flip the switch and you say, okay, I'm going to focus on how I can be the best teammate who's not on the field, how I can support and encourage, the other players on the team. That's one thing. The other thing would be to be willing to discover why, honestly and truthfully, you're not on the field.
Mhm,
Like sometimes we don't want to hear that. We want to blame it on, well, the coach has favorites. We want to blame it on, well, I'm the newest to the team or whatever it may be.
mhm.
But there's probably another reason for that. And we need to uncover that. We need to be willing to seek that truth, even if it hurts.
If everything external was taken from you, your business, your network, but you kept your mindset, what exact steps would you take to rebuild everything you have built nowadays?
Yeah, I think the assumption would be that I would want to rebuild exactly what I have today.
Mhm,
And I think sometimes things are taken from us because we need a reset. Things are taken from us because we've been pushing too hard or because we've become so obsessed with things that may be not great for us. And so, number one is I would have to explore, do I actually want to recreate what I currently have today? Or is this an opportunity for me to start from scratch? Over the years, I um, would often think about, you know, all the things that I wanted to achieve, wanted to accomplish. And I would feel like I was holding on to those things very tightly. like grasping for those things and holding those things. And everyone's probably heard this analogy, but like you can't receive something new if you're grasping onto what you currently have so hard, right? Your hands are closed. You can't receive something new.
Mm-hmm.
And I've learned, and this again is easier said than done in the moment, but I've learned to hold things very loosely. We just built, my wife and family, we built a new house a year and a half ago. And, in many ways it's our dream house. But if we lost the house tomorrow, I wouldn't care. Like, don't get me wrong, I love the house. I'm very grateful for the house. I'm very appreciative of the house. But the house does not define who I am. The house doesn't even define an accomplishment that was a goal for me. What it defines is the type of person that I had to become, the type of leader, the type of entrepreneur, the type of husband, father, etc., that I had to become to be the type of person who could attract that type of house into my life. And so it's about becoming, right? Mm-hmm. And so for me, I don't know the steps because I don't know what I would want to recreate. Mm-hmm. My life in so many ways is absolutely perfect. My wife, my kids, we would be happy, living in a much smaller house. We don't need a big house. We don't need fancy cars. Right? So I don't need a big office. I don't need a big team. Like, learning just to be happy with who you are and who you're in the process of becoming, that is the key.
Mm-hmm. Becoming reminds me a lot of trust the process, and how we trust the process, how we should focus on the process, not necessarily about the finish line. And I'm sure you have a lot of clients that come to you and they want to grow fast. What's the cost that you've seen people pay when they chase speed over depth? Because I feel like for athletes it's the same thing. Like, we wanna get better soon. I wanna be playing right now. I wanna win today, even though I might not be ready for it. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So what's the price that you've seen people pay, and how can they focus on the process, on becoming, instead of just finishing getting to the finish line?
Yeah. First of all, I'd say most people assume they're paying a price that other people aren't paying or aren't willing to pay. But across the board, most people feel that way, right? So if you look at, any athlete who is aspiring to do something great, aspiring to, go into collegiate or get into professional, all of them believe the same thing, right? They believe that they are working as hard, if not harder, than the people around them. Mm-hmm. They believe they have as much discipline, if not more discipline, than the people around them. They believe they have more skill, more talent, more than all the people around them. So you have to strip that away, because everyone has that belief and holds that belief to be true. I think that when it comes to, I was going to go down a story, but I'll spare the story.
No, go ahead.
I just think that so often that we get so wrapped up in our own narratives and our own beliefs. And so, when business owners come to me, or when, athletes come to you for input and advice, what's so fascinating is that even the playing field is almost completely even across the board in terms of what they believe to be true about themselves, right? What gets revealed very quickly, and what separates those who can actually scale from those who can't, or I believe it's the ones who are willing to hear the truth, to give up all of their preconceived notions, and focus on the fundamental few. We have a client, I'll give you a quick example. We have a client that has gone in just a few years from $22 million in revenue to $3.6 billion in annual revenue. And the way they did that was not by doing what the entrepreneur, the leader, the founder wanted to do. It was not by doing what he felt like doing. It was by following a very predictable path to growth. That's pretty boring, pretty straightforward, but it's proven. And sometimes we get so distracted by trying to find the hack, the shortcut, the thing, that we bypass all the fundamentals.
That makes a lot of sense. You mentioned a few questions that we should ask ourselves and that you asked yourself, but what are some other questions that you still ask yourself, um, just to stay aligned with who you truly are?
Yeah, I think the better question is, how do we stay truly aligned with who we want to become? Because who we are today is irrelevant.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't matter. What matters is, who do we want to become? Because not all of us come from the same background. We don't all come from an even playing field. So we can't say, who am I and how do I stay true to who I am? Instead, we must say, who do I want to become? And then what is going to be required of me to become that kind of person? So another great question that you can ask is this: from a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the absolute best, 1 being the worst, how would you rate me this week as a teammate? And I don't want fluff answers. I need honest answers. And so if they give you an honest answer, and let's just say they come back and say, okay, you were a 7 this week. The next question is, thank you for the feedback. What is one specific thing that I can do in the next week that would move me up closer to a 10? And we can do that in every area of our life. So you can do it in your relationships. You can do it at work. You can do it, coaching. You can do it with teammates. You can apply that one principle. Again, it's about seeing the things that other people can clearly see, but we can't see because we're blind to it.
That makes a lot of sense. I'll definitely have to text some people today after this. Um, After everything you have experienced, wins, failures, doubts, what do you know for sure, if there is anything that you know for sure, about identity, about performance, about fulfillment?
Number one, I would say is that personality isn't permanent, is number one. It's a construct that we make up, that we are not held to. At any point in time, you can choose to completely shift and change your personality. So that's an important thing that I think is so important. Others would be, I think, what was the question part again? Sorry.
What do you know for sure,
Yep.
about identity, performance, or fulfillment?
Yeah. So the personality part is incredibly important. Number two, performance. Performance cannot improve if you're not measuring it. You cannot get better on the field, for example, if there aren't metrics that you're working off of. The same is true in all areas of life. So if you're trying to get in shape, if you're not counting calories, if you're not weighing, if you're not recording workouts, you're not going to drastically improve performance. So when it comes to performance, the question is, what are you actually measuring and what are you tracking? The second part to that is the 80-20 principle applies to that. There is something in every type of sport. There is something in every type of area or every area of life that holds more weight, that produces far more results than everything else. Your job is to figure out what that 20% is and focus on improving that thing. Because if you improve that thing, you're going to get 80% better results from that one thing. The hard part is figuring out what that 20% is.
Mm-hmm. And how can we figure that part?
I'm saying the same thing again, but we have to seek outside truths about ourselves. We have to be willing to listen and follow advice. Like the number of times that people have given me advice sounded like great advice, but I thought I knew better. And so I did something else, right? Those happen time and time again. We think we know better sometimes. But when it comes to advice, let me throw this one little bit out there. When it comes to advice, there's a big difference between advice and opinion. Very few people can actually give you advice.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone can give you an opinion. The people who can give you advice fall into one of three categories. Number one is someone who's done the thing you're attempting to do, right? So they can give you advice. Number two, it's someone who observed firsthand someone else who did the thing that you're trying to do, right? So they may not have been the one on the field, but they were the parent, or they were the teammate, or they were the coach of the person. And then the third type of person who can give you advice is someone who has spent years studying and doing that thing. So an example of that would be like Michael Jordan's coach, Tim Grover, right? Mm-hmm. Yes, he played basketball, but he was never at the level that a Jordan or somebody like that was. Yet he spent years and decades studying the sport, studying the movements and all of that stuff so he could give advice.
Mm-hmm. So if it's not one of the three people, they're giving just opinions, and should I ignore it in a way?
You can listen to it,
mm-hmm.
but you have to not give it as much credence as someone who can give you advice. One of the three categories I've given you, mm-hmm. right? So, just for a business example, like I can go get business advice from anybody. Any of my family members can give me business advice. Any of my friends can give me business advice, or business opinion. But it's only opinion. It's not actual advice. The problem starts when we start following opinion as if it's advice.
Mm-hmm. Do you believe in God?
Yes.
Yes. What role does God have in your life?
Yeah. So there's two answers to this. Number one, I believe that He is the creator and sustainer of all things. Number two, I believe that I am a child of God. And so therefore that worldview, if you will, shapes a lot of my philosophy, a lot of my beliefs, and a lot of the decisions that I make on a day-to-day basis.
Mm-hmm. It makes sense. Is there any questions that I did not ask you that you would love to, to share with the world?
I think the one question may be, what is your favorite quote and why?
Okay. What's your favorite quote and why?
Yeah, my favorite quote is, if actions speak louder than words, then let me live loud enough to be heard. We live in a world where a lot of people do a lot of big talk, make a lot of promises, say a lot of things, have a lot of great intentions. But we all know that actions speak louder than words. And I would much rather my actions demonstrate my life and my commitments and what I stand for versus me just talking about those things.
Awesome. I love that. Wayne, thanks so much for taking the time. I know you are in between meetings and all. Loved my time at Ugly Mug. Love everything that I learned from you, from Ugly Mug, just from watching, and also the things that we talked about throughout these few years. So I really appreciate you taking the time to come here and share a little bit more in depth what your mindset looks like.
Thank you, Igor. I appreciate it. And thank you. It was great while you were here, getting to know you, getting to see you compete with the other interns. And I guess you ultimately won the competition.
Yeah, I guess so. I'm glad to hear that. Thanks.